In other words, they've been drinking early in the morning, and that's what's going on here, which is really what the cynic does, right? There's some other thing happening, it can't be, But can you imagine that moment? Now, we think, we know about speaking in tongues. Most of us, know about Pentecostal churches and that whole dynamic. And most of it's kind of babble, and I was always questioning that. And when I was in ministerial school, I read that passage, did some research on it, and basically they weren't saying that it's about babble. They were speaking in known languages. It wasn't babble, it was known languages. And it was like sitting there, it would be like if you were with a group of people from different countries, and I was speaking, and each of you were hearing the lesson in your own language. That's what it would be like. And everybody understanding what was being spoken. And so there was this incredible sense of communication and understanding. And that had to be an inspiring and powerful moment, and sort of a kickoff. Can you imagine a kickoff to the work that needed to be done, the realization that there's something happening here. There's something more than just, this experience we went through. There's another one that's pushing us forward into another place and to another experience. And that's what inspiration does. That's how it shows up in our life. When we're inspired in some way, we're inspired to move forward. We're inspired to do something in our lives, to make a difference someplace, to come forth and to create something in our life. So it's not an intellectual thing. And when we're in our heads, when we're looking at it intellectually, that's when we say, well, they must be drinking. They must have, been sipping on the bottle in the morning, because there's some explanation to this that's more than just what's going on. And so it's an experiential thing. It's when we let go and say, we feel this, we experience this. And that's what inspiration is. It's something we feel and experience. I think inspiration is possible for us every day. I think it's possible for us to be inspired in our life every single day. I was sitting, I was starting to write this lesson, and I wanted to do a lesson on inspiration, and I was sitting there, and I was not inspired. It's like it was one of the most uninspired moments that I had had for a while. I was frustrated about something that was going on in my life that I was trying to deal with and take care of, and it wasn't working the way I wanted it to, and I was just in that sort of space, and I'm thinking, I've got to write a talk on inspiration, and here I am, and it's Friday morning. And so I opened up my email. That's what I do when I'm frustrated. I divert myself, And so I opened up my email, and all of a sudden pops up an email from this Navajo shaman who in Gallup, New Mexico area. He lives on the Navajo reservation. And he was somebody I met and struck up a friendship with a couple of years ago when I was with an 8th grade class of Waldorf kids. We went down and did some community service work on the Navajo reservation, then did a rafting trip, and it was a great 11-day experience. And I talked about that a couple of years ago, and it was really an incredible experience in my life because of the relationships that I made, and this was one of them. And I hadn't heard from Patrick for a while, and so all of a sudden here's this email, and it says the subject of the email, it says Yati, Y-A-A''T-E-E-H, Yati, just Yati. Here I am. I don't know what it means, but I know. But it sounds good, It's like, oh, Yati, yeah, like Yahoo, yay, It says Yati from the res. Oh, it's Patrick, So it says, Dear Stephen, I'm sure you're doing okay. I'm thinking, no, I'm not. I'm sure you're doing okay. But as soon as I heard that, I started being more okay, right? It says, I'm still at the park working whenever I can. Now this park is it's a veterans memorial park that he's created himself that we went down to help build. And so we did a lot of building work, and it's a great park, and he has a Hogan on it for ceremonies and all of the stuff. And he has all the list of all the veterans, Navajo veterans, names on the park that have served and died in the military. And so, which is an important part of their life and their culture. And he says, I'm still at the park working whenever I can, and presently I have over 635 names to put on 2 more walls. I think of you and all the young men and women who were here to lend me a hand. I felt so happy today thanking the Great Spirit. I felt so happy today thanking the Great Spirit. Now, can you feel that? I mean, it's like, how can you not be lifted? I just had this vision of Patrick, and he has this kind of round face and smile. I could feel his sense of happiness that day. He said, a lot of veterans and families read your poem. And I wrote this poem about my experience there, and about what the purpose of the park was, and I'd shared it a couple of years ago here, but it's kind of a lengthy poem, and I didn't, well, apparently he's been passing it out to everybody. Instead of telling everybody what the park's about, he says, here, read this, and this will tell you what it's about, which is great. So my name's all over the Navajo reservation down there, And so it's, it's kind of inspiring in that way. So I'm glad you wrote it. That way I don't feel like a broken record of what the park is about. If you should ever see the young men and women who are here, give them a warm thank you from me, sincerely yours, Patrick. Well, that just changed my day, And that's what inspiration is, isn't it? It's the Spirit comes to us in a lot of ways. The Holy Spirit moves in our life in some wonderful, incredible ways. A note we receive when we least expect it, a comment that somebody makes, a beautiful sunset. It reminded me of the experiences that I had in that time in my life during that 11 days with these kids, which we had an incredibly wonderful time. It was a powerful experience of service and just, the joy of the whole thing. And the healing energy of the memorial experience, because the intention of the memorial is what they do in the Navajo experience is when their warriors go off to battle, which is they go off to serve, or they go into Iraq or Afghanistan, they send them off, they bless them, and they have a ceremony where they send them, off to serve, to be warriors. And then when they come back, there's a recognition that no matter whether they're wounded physically or not, they recognize that they're wounded mentally and emotionally. There's an acknowledgement that exists because of what they've seen, which is what nobody should have to see. That's the way he phrased it. He said they see things that no one should have to see. And so when they bring them back, they bring them into the Hogan, and they have a ceremony where they bring them into the mother's womb, and they help to heal them and to bring them back in. I get emotional just, having the experience, bringing them back into the community as whole individuals. And that's what the purpose of the park is. So it's more than just an honoring of the veterans. It's a process park that's very powerful. And so I think, anytime we are inspired, it takes us out of the mundane moments of our life. And it's not that we have to look around to be inspired. It's, we don't have to look very far. It's all around us. Inspiration is present in many ways. It's the magic of a beautiful sunset that comes on us unexpectedly, or sunrise in the morning. It's a sweet word of encouragement by someone who we happen to run into that just says, gosh, it's great to see you. You look wonderful. Or it's a revelation of clarity that we have in our mind about something that's going on in our life. It's any moment of inspiration. It's tears that might show up when we're sitting in a movie theater watching a movie, and it reminds us of some experience in our life, and we feel the moment or the experience. It's watching our children. And no matter what age they are, it's watching them and seeing how amazing they can be. My daughter Caroline inspires me all the time with her athletics, and she's a jock, she's an athlete. That's kind of her mojo. And she was, at the track, she went out for track this spring, and she does mostly sprinting, but she was at practice, and they had a kind of a lull in the practice, and so her and this guy were playing catch with a tennis ball. And so the coach comes over and says, was watching her throw and see how strong a thrower she is. She said, why don't you throw the javelin? So she says, well, okay, I'll go over and try it. She's never thrown the javelin, so she goes over, and her first throw, she breaks the school record.